Girls Night In.
Well,
Hello.
hello. Good morning, sunflower.
Good morning, Starshine.
Listen, let
the
me
Earth
tell you-
says hello.
What is that from?
It's from Willy Wonka.
Oh my gosh, you know I can't stand Willy Wonka. Don't do that
I know.
to
They're
me.
making another
Come
remake,
on.
too.
You know what I think they should do? They should put a female in that role.
No, well, they already cast your son in the role, Timothy
Did
Chalamet.
they really?
Yeah. Have you not seen the trailer?
I can't, Lou, you know I can't watch
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Listen,
you're not gonna like it.
here's the thing. Miles Whitman Roberts looks like Timothy Chalamet. We have decided. And I cannot do weird. I can't do like trippy.
Yeah.
I can't do Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka is my first memorable nightmare. I dreamed from the Gene Wilder version. I dreamed that night that I was the Blueberry Girl.
Oh, my God.
And I can't, ever since then, I can't watch like Alice in Wonderland and any of the, who's the guy, honey? The director.
Oh, Tim Burton.
Can't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Cannot do it.
I saw a TikTok the other day that was like, hot girls are terrified of this man. And it was the guy from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. The evil guy.
What did
with
we used
the
to call
long
him?
nose.
Yeah.
We called him Doo-Doo Nose.
Doo-doo nose. Luann, I have to tell you something. Okay, we're doing The Devil Wears Prada because Elena and I are, I wouldn't say not interested in fashion, but we're not like hyper fixated. Neither one of us realize that this is actually Fashion Week.
Yeah, we're not high fashion girlies.
No.
We're like Pinterest outfit girlies.
Yes.
But we don't read Vogue.
No.
Like we don't like go to Saks or like anything like that.
No, and I can't bring myself to spend money on that. But we love this movie. We love The Devil Wears Prada. So, Lou, I went off the rails.
Ooh, okay.
I
Lay it on me, baby.
went down a hole so deep and so quickly, just like the Barbie movie, that I forced us to be able to record this morning because I got to get this off my mind. I cannot spend the rest of the day doing a deep dive because I literally started yesterday around 5 o'clock, went until 10 o'clock last night, got up at 5 this morning, and have gone until just about 15 minutes ago into this world. And I got to get out of this world. It's not healthy.
Yeah. Let's do it.
It's not healthy. So here's what I have in mind. I think, you and I talked about, doing a little bit different format. And so this is what I think. I think we do just the movie and we try and stay away from the deep topics until midway. And then we're going to go into some areas of things like women in power, especially in the business industry, especially fashion in itself. The difference between what we expect of men in these high power positions and also what the fashion industry says to us about body image.
Ooh, I love it, girl.
But
Let's get deep.
But first, we're going to go light and do just Devil Wears Prada. I'm going to start off with our stats. Rotten Tomatoes, 75% critics, 76% audience. It says everything that you guys can already formulate, imagine. So I'm not going to go into the reviews because it's everything you think it said. The budget was 35 to 41 million, somewhere in that range, and it brought in globally 326.7.
Okay.
Very popular. The tagline, Hell on Wheels. Yes. And we know the main actors and actresses. So Meryl Streep, I will say, was nominated for an Academy Award for this and did not win. She did win the Golden Globe
Okay.
for Miranda Priestley.
Wait, what is a Golden Globe? Am I so out of it?
Oh, honey, Golden Globe. The Golden Globe Awards. They're...
What is that?
Well, it's right
Is
at...
it movies?
Yeah, baby. So
Oh, why am I thinking of Oscars?
you're just blanking, honey. The Oscars are the main one. Golden Globes are right after that. And then
Oh, I see.
and then it's the Screen Actors Guild is underneath
Oh,
that.
SAG.
So
Okay.
the SAG Award. So it's Oscars are most prestigious. Golden Globes are next. And then the SAG Awards. Then
Okay.
Emmys are just television, which,
That's what I thought. And the Tonys are Broadway.
yeah. but she's won Emmys too. So, and a Tony, and yeah, she's Meryl. I mean, she is absolutely
Triple
the
threat.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, this supporting roles got very much praise. Stanley Tucci, Emily Blunt, and of course, Anne Hathaway.
Of course.
So, Luann, give us the overall synopsis.
All right. So I'm sure most everyone has seen Devil Wears Prada. And if you haven't, treat yourself and go watch it. Everybody loves that iconic opening scene to Suddenly I See, and like all the women are getting ready for work. It's just like the most exciting. Like Greg watched it with me and he was like, yes, this opening. I'm like, I know. It's so good. I love like the fashion montages in this movie. So we open with a montage and we're following Andy, who is fresh out of college from Brown.
That's where the book character actually went.
Okay, where's she from?
Northwestern is
Northwestern. So she is like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed journalist student, fresh out of college. She wants to work for like Washington Post or like, you know, Vanity. I think she said Vanity Fair is like one of the ones she's interested in. And she's having a really hard time getting interviews. And so it was either this or like a fishing magazine, something like that.
So
I don't remember.
Auto.
Yeah. Yeah. So she has no interest in fashion. As we're watching this montage, it's like all these beautiful women getting ready for work. And then it cuts to Andy and she's like in a frumpy sweater and like getting a bagel on the side of the road. Like, you know, she's just kind of showing the difference between her and like the women that read Runway. And so she goes into her interview at Runway and meets Emily Blunt, who is like the first assistant to Miranda, and then they're hiring for like assistant 2. And so Emily Blunt's making it very clear that their jobs are so different. And that, you know, Andy would be getting the coffee and getting her coat, whereas Emily Blunt's character is going to Fashion Week. That's the biggest thing, is that she has been slaving away because at the end of the year in the spring, she gets to go to Fashion Week with Miranda. And Miranda is head of Runway. Everyone knows her. She is like God at this magazine. Everyone's scared of her. When she comes into the building, everyone flees. And so Andy goes through this interview process, which we definitely need to come back to because of the way that Miranda breaks down her perception of Andy. Really scathing interview. It's barely even an interview. It's Andy standing in front of Miranda's desk. Miranda's basically giving her a once-over, kind of roast her a little bit, and then they end up giving her the role just out of desperation. And so Andy starts working at the company. Her first day, she's in like clogs and like, again, another frumpy sweater. Everyone's making fun of her. She's realizing, I'm so out of place. She befriends Stanley Tucci, who is like an art director, I guess. And he's got that like petty, but like lovingly petty vibe with her of like, girl, you're going to have to stop eating soup if you want to fit in here. You're going to have to start eating salad. Another thing we're going to get into later. So Stanley Tucci kind of guides Andy with like her fashion sense and how to navigate Runway. She starts coming to the office and everyone's shocked at how amazing her outfits are because, you know, Stanley Tucci is getting her outfits from costuming. He's kind of helping her out, hooking her up with all the goods. But she's getting better and better at her job. And so work is becoming her life. And Andy has this boyfriend and group of friends who are all like, they're also fresh out of college and they're in their entry level roles. And, you know, their jobs are not nearly as grueling as Andy's. And so they don't understand. Like, there's one night where Miranda calls her while she's at the bar with her friends, and they're all throwing her phone around and, like, making a joke out of it. And it's very serious to her. She ends up missing. At one point, her dad comes to visit the city. They're supposed to go see Chicago and, like, have a lovely dinner together. And it gets ruined because Miranda needs a flight home. And that has to be Andy's 100% attention. So she ruins her visit with her dad. She's never able to see her friends. And Miranda's making the job harder and harder. She's really testing Andy. And so it gets to the point where Andy's really good at her job. She's amazed Miranda. She's even, there's another journalist gentleman that's taken interest in her. It's getting to that point where like it's a little inappropriate that we're wondering like, is this going to break up Andy and her boyfriend? Her and her boyfriend are growing apart. Like she had to miss his birthday for this job. You know, he doesn't understand her. She's not who she was when they first started dating. And then it all kind of comes to a boil with Fashion Week. Emily gets sick and she disappoints Miranda. And so Miranda's like, Emily's out, you're in, you're going to Paris. And Andy's like, I can't do that to her. This has been everything to her. And Miranda's like, doesn't matter. You either go to Paris with me or you're done. And you have to tell her, by the way, and tell her right now. And so Andy's compromising who she is for this role, as I really would love to get into further as well. And she's realizing, like, she hates Miranda, but she's turning into Miranda. And that leads us to the end of the movie. Will Andy choose this life and sacrifice basic happiness and compassion to win in this career? Or is she going to choose her friends and choose her values?
Oh, Elena, there you go, sister. I love how you ended it right there, because you're right. We're going to get into that. As I want to give you some background about the movie itself before we get into breaking down how we feel about the characters and the decisions that they make. First off, this was written by one of Anna Wintour's past assistants.
Yes,
So,
I know this is about Anna Wintour. I know Anna Wintour hates this movie.
she has revised her statement on that and said that she was, I don't know if this was coached, but that she feels like it brought attention to the fashion industry, and that she sees that as positive.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So Laura Weisberger was her assistant, and she started, after she left Vogue, she started writing this book. And Fox actually bought the rights to it before the book was finished. And,
Oh, wow.
And then, there were rewrites. The screenplay does not strictly stick to the book. And what I found very interesting is that the majority of the people in the industry refused to be a part of this film because they were terrified of the repercussions from Anna Wintour and Vogue magazine.
Yeah. And you're going to sit there and act like this isn't a true story when no one wanted to be a part of it because they were scared for their jobs?
Thank you. Because, some people came back with, that's not true. Well, really? Well, then why didn't you participate? And the only actual designer that was in the movie was Valentino. So I don't know why he wasn't afraid. But, Heidi Klum makes a slight appearance. Giselle is in the movie, but she wouldn't be in it as a model. And
Is she the one that's Emily's friend? Okay.
And, Anna Wintour's has a whole, not wing, but in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, because she is the guiding influencer for the Met Gala. And so the Metropolitan Museum of Art wouldn't have a part of it.
I knew that reminded me. I was like, oh yeah, she does run the Met Gala, because whenever the Kardashians talk about it, they mention her. And I also, when I was showing Greg the movie, I was like, so this is about Anna Wintour. And he's like, who's that? And I was like, on the Kardashians, whenever there's a fashion show, it cuts to that lady with like the blunt bob. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's her.
So the Metropolitan Museum actually has the largest costuming department, and they have the Costume Institute. And so I watched a documentary last night. Your dad and I watched a documentary called The First Monday in May, which was a 2016 documentary on the Met Gala. And we fast forwarded to all the scenes where Anna was in it. That was part of the spiral that I went down, was my fascination with this woman. And, Meryl Streep, the interviews that I watched, there was no direct question of, did you model yourself after her? Or I didn't see any of those. Maybe they exist, but I didn't see them. What she said was that she went at it more from a standpoint of the male figures in power that she's encountered. Because one of the interviews that I saw, they asked, you were soft spoken instead of yelling. Did you do that on purpose? And she was like, absolutely, because that's always been intimidating to me. The men who, when you get quieter, it's more terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And, so let's back up to actual, first off, Lou, when did you see this movie?
I don't know if this was the first time I watched it, but my first memory of watching it was when we first moved into the house.
Really?
And I don't think he's ever going to listen to this podcast, so I can call it out. Our next door neighbor, we looked behind us and he was watching it through our window. Like we looked, do you remember that?
No.
We looked back and Chris was like watching it through our window and then we all looked and he was like, oh, and like duck his head.
He may have just been checking out what we were watching that night, I'm telling you.
Yeah, but we all made a joke. We're like, oh, he's just had to watch Devil Wears Prada with us.
So I don't remember when I watched it for the first time, but I would say conservatively I've watched it 10 times.
Yeah, same. Mm-hmm. I've seen it a lot.
What would you say is the attraction for you for this movie?
I think like who doesn't love to see like beautiful clothes? And I feel like the looks are so timeless. Like I don't look at it and go like, oh, it's so like early 2000s. Like it still looks amazing today. But outside of like the surface level stuff, I think it's just so, even if you don't work in the fashion industry, there's so many issues that come up that every woman goes through that I think is just super relatable. And so watching it is like cathartic.
Okay, delve into that for just a second, please. What would you say the issues are?
I think more general issues that everyone goes through is like the body shaming and looking at fashion magazines and thinking like, oh, like I don't look like that woman, so something must be wrong with me, stuff like that. But then also as I've gotten older and as I've been through a toxic work environment, not where I'm at now, but one of my first roles out of college, that is cathartic for me to watch because not to the same level, but I went through something similar of having that kind of boss and knowing the kind of like trauma and anxiety it can give you. And then the relief when you finally decide enough is enough, that's cathartic for me to watch as well.
Okay, I love that. So yes, eventually, if you've not watched it, we're going to spoil the ending. So stop right now. But yes, eventually Andy decides, I can't do this anymore. As a matter of fact, it comes off the heels of Miranda saying, you remind me of me. Mm-hmm. And Andy is like, oh, there's some better dialogue in there, when she realizes that she took a part in screwing over Emily out of going to Fashion Week in Paris, and which I don't necessarily agree with because Emily had broken both of her legs. She wasn't going. Mm-hmm. So that to me is kind of a flaw in the story because really what would have, in my mind, what would have happened was Andy would have said, well, you can't go. I wouldn't go if you could go, but you can't go now. So, I don't.
She was probably so scared that Miranda would find out she didn't tell her the real reason why.
Okay.
It's like it's when, and I would love to hear if you've ever had whether it's a boss or someone in your life that you've been scared of like that, but you almost get paranoid. You're like, they're going to know I didn't say exactly what they wanted me to say. She probably thought, okay, Emily's going to tell her that it was because of the broken legs. And then Miranda's going to get upset with me that I didn't say the real reason why.
Okay, so here, that's a good question. I'm going to answer your question and then I'm going to turn it back on you. No, I've not. I have what people who are, I have a bit of an attitude issue when it comes to work environments where I have enough of a outspoken personality where if I see something that I feel is morally wrong, I'm going to put myself on the chopping block for other people and speak out. And consequences be darned, whether that's smart or not. Like, I would have told Miranda where she could stick it, and if I got fired, I got fired. But let me say, that is with the benefit of having somebody who's got a backup. I've been married since I've been out of college, so I've always had a supplemental income in my household. I didn't have to.
I feel like with your career too, if you were to not like an environment in a certain school, you'd be like, well, whatever, I'll just go work at a different school.
Well, that's true, but I was like that at Disney too.
Okay.
And, stupidly so at my young age. I made, a huge mistake when I was working there, but it was because I was speaking out against something that I thought was wrong. And but that wasn't a moral imperative. And the way that I see Andy and Miranda's relationship, it's a moral imperative. Like when we get down to the crisis mode where Miranda completely screws over Nigel. And, we get the line where Nigel's like, she'll make it up to me when the time is right. And Andy goes, are you sure about that? And Nigel comes back with, no. Well, if you don't trust her, what are you doing there?
He has the hopes that it will work out and that it'll be worth it if he sticks it out.
Mm-hmm. And
he would rather stick it out and get screwed over than not try at all.
Yeah.
Because he's dedicated his whole life to it.
Well, and because Miranda's so powerful.
Right. That's the other scary thing, is that if you screw over her or you piss her off, you're done in that industry.
Right.
That entire industry.
An entire industry is completely different. You're absolutely right. So I shouldn't be judging based on my experience because I've never experienced that, I guess is a better way of saying it.
No, but I think like on a smaller scale, there is like, because even though where I was with my situation, like I still was too scared to speak up against the injustices I was seeing because I was fresh out of college and I didn't know any better. I thought like this is the end all be all. Like I feel like when you're that young and it's your first role, you just don't realize there's a whole world out there and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's okay to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me, and now after that experience, I would be more like you of like, no, I don't, that goes against my values. So I'm not going to participate in that, or I'm not going to stand by while that happens. I'm either going to walk away or I'm going to speak against it.
I guess that's a better way to say it. Absolutely. And like I said, I shouldn't snap to judgment because I've never been in that situation. I really have not been in that situation. I want to come back to this, but let's stick to the movie. What are there favorite scenes for you? Are there, like, I know there's so many iconic moments in that, but are there favorite scenes for you besides the montages?
Yeah. I mean, I love the scene when she gets the Harry Potter books and she puts it on her desk and she's like, well, what are the twins going to do with the one copy? She goes, oh no, this is just your proof. The twins each have their own copy that's bound to look like a book and it's on the train with them right now. And it cuts to them on the train reading the Harry Potter. And I'm like, yes, get her.
Yeah.
Get her.
Because what can she do to you? You did exactly what she wanted you to do. I love that scene too.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of her too in the scene where Emily cannot remember the name of the couple coming up to Miranda and she does. I'm like, I love when she has those wins.
Yep. So talk to me about how you feel.
Well, what about you?
Oh,
I want to hear your scene.
Mine is my very favorite scene is the very end of the movie when Andy calls Emily Blunt and says, I've got all these clothes. I think that's shows her taking the high road and her also appreciating the fact that even though this job wasn't for her, that how important it is to Emily, she still validates that.
Mm-hmm. She got a respect for it. Even though she doesn't respect Miranda, I think she has a respect for the industry and for people like Emily and Nigel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact that it closes with Meryl Streep smiling about the fact that she's been true to herself, that Andy's been true to herself. Like, that secretly, just like the interviewer guy says, you know, she said you were her biggest disappointment and that I'd be a fool not to hire you. You know, that deep down, what Miranda appreciates is somebody who goes after what they want.
Yeah.
And with a fierceness. And
that Andy had the strength that she didn't have, which was to choose herself over a job.
So let's talk about the relationships. Let's talk about Nate. And Lily. How do we feel about, like, let me say this. I very much appreciated the scene where they, you know, they get angry at Andy. Lily gets angry at Andy because she sees her with Christian at the art gallery. And immediately after that, Nate and she are outside, and, you know, Miranda calls and Nate goes, you know, here's a clue. Whoever's phone calls you're answering, that's the person that you're in a relationship with. But my favorite line that he says is, I don't care that you've turned into one of the clackers. What I care about is that you would have some integrity. And I'm like, ooh, that's good. Like, have you changed your value system, or are you just denying who you are?
Right. Have you leveled up, you as Andy, and just risen to this job but kept your values, or are you just a totally different person or faking to be this person you're not?
And I think if he had stayed, we wouldn't have gotten to the resolution. She wouldn't have been forced into that resolution.
I think, too, like, it's mirrored a lot with the scene when they're in Paris and Miranda's like, well, my husband's not coming because we're getting a divorce. And it's like, it's kind of giving Andy, like, this is your future. Like, you have, you know, she's like, divorce number 3 or whatever it is, or 4. And it's like, you can't keep a relationship when you're working like this. And it is always going to lead in someone being disappointed. And I also think that scene's so interesting too, because it's the first time Miranda is vulnerable around anyone, let alone Andy. And it's so interesting because, like, she walks in, she doesn't have any makeup on. She's in a robe, she's crying. But then it's funny because Andy, like, responds with kindness, as, like, any decent human would. And Miranda immediately, like, her reaction to that kindness is, like, snapping at her and talking to her like she's stupid, because it's like she can't handle, like, being vulnerable with someone. It's too much for her.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that scene up because it is one of my favorites. It begs a follow-up question that, and again, guys, I just want to put out there, you know, I'm one of these people that my mind changes with every argument. Like, if somebody were to say, did you think about it this way? I'm like, oh, no, maybe I think that. So, you know, whatever our reactions are in the first place, I don't mean to sound judgmental because I change based on the argument I've just heard. But it makes me think, that scene always makes me think, when she says, it's not me that I worry about, it's the girls. When she says, you know, I'm going to be splashed all over the newspapers again. And that always makes me think about famous people in general. You know, I have a hard time with famous people being like, well, I want my privacy. I'm not saying you don't deserve that, but you knew that going in, you know, and that's a hard thing to reconcile with. And then when you bring kids into this, absolutely, I have no problem. I actually very much admire the famous parents out there who are like, that's fine, but not my children. But don't you feel like there's a level of, well, you kind of knew that was going to happen, or you have to kind of expect that that's going to happen if you're famous, that they're going to try and get pictures of the kids, or your kids are going to be in the spotlight?
I think it's two separate arguments. I totally get what you're saying of, like, maybe not being surprised that that's happening, because that is, like, part of the deal. But I think a whole other argument is like the absolute disgustingness of paparazzis and of, as much as I love my People magazine, like the damage, the deep damage that these star magazines or celebrity magazines do to our society and to celebrities, because celebrities are still people. They're still human beings. No one wants to be discussed like that. Nobody wants to be invaded like that. And so I don't think that that should exist at all. We live in a world where it's not going to go away. So then that leads me back to your point of like, it's unfortunate this comes with that, but it can't come as a shock because this has been going on for decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't make it right, but it is reality.
Yeah, and I think the people that really, really prioritize their privacy go to extreme lengths to protect that. So it just depends on what lengths you're willing to go to have that privacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there anything else about the movie that you wanted to bring up? I will say the costuming, get a load of this, Luke. This was interesting, I thought. This costuming budget, up until another movie, which I could have you guess, but was the highest revenue spent or highest amount spent on costuming for a long time. And one other movie has beat it out. It was a movie in 2018. And this is a 2006 movie. So for 12 years, it was $1 million budget for the costumes.
What came out in 2018? Is it like something I know?
It is.
Is it our genre?
So, yes. We have not done it. It's not even something that you and I discussed doing. We could. Is it a happy movie or a sad movie? It's a happy movie. It's Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? We just watched Everything Everywhere All the Time.
All at once.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was so good. And it's the mom from Crazy Rich Asians. The guy's mom.
Mm-hmm.
She's so beautiful. But we should do that movie.
Yeah.
We should do that movie. That is amazing. The only other thing I want to maybe discuss, and I don't even know what my take is on it, is Christian.
You know what? I think we should let Christian lie. I think...
he was just a distraction.
He was a distraction. He was a culmination of I think he was meant to distract away from Miranda to show us this is what real bad looks like.
Or like that almost enticing... It was like the enticingness of the industry as a whole, but in a person. Like the temptingness of like getting wrapped up in the luxury of it all, and like it kind of personified that in him. Mm-hmm. Even though like she knew it was wrong, she technically has a boyfriend.
Oh, dipping her toe in that wrong side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just like, this is what my life could be. But deep down, you know it's not right.
Yeah.
But on the surface, it's like, she says that after their date, she's swinging around the lamppost, and she's like, oh, it's like a movie.
Uh-huh.
You know, like.
That this isn't real. Mm-hmm.
Right. But in her heart of hearts, she knows this isn't real life. This isn't real connection.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So one of the scenes I do want us to touch on is one of the most iconic, when before Andy goes for her makeover with Nigel, and she's in the room, they're doing the prep for the magazine, and they're holding up the two belts, and Andy snickers, and she's like, they look the same to me. And Miranda goes into a 1 page of dialogue. They said this was a big deal, that it was 1 full page for the speech that Miranda gives. And they reworked this scene several times. Finally, the screenwriter was at Starbucks, and she was like, you know what? Miranda wouldn't say blue. She would say
cerulean.
Yeah, she would say a specific form. And then I went into the deep dive. This is interesting, y'all. I went to a deep dive about the trickle-down effect that Miranda describes about, that was it was all made up, by the way, about, it was Yves Saint Laurent that introduced this in his line, and it's Cerulean in his line, and then it went to several other designers, and then, she gives this whole speech, and she's like, and then it ended up at the bargain bin at some casual corner where you dug it out, and you have the nerve to think that you just picked this sweater when really it was picked for you with from all the people in this room. And, first off, that was one of the things where Meryl said, I just kept an even tone. I never, raised my voice, and how much more powerful it was to be in your face with this quiet voice. But I did a dive into, is that true? Are these decisions made? And, yes, there are articles that support that. But then there was also this article that said the reverse has actually happened now, where with brands, and they specifically mentioned Champion, that Champion brand was brought to light because of kids on the street wearing it. And they're like,
Streetwear.
And now it's gotten to the place where the kids who brought it to light can't afford to buy it. And
It's like gentrification of fashion.
Isn't that interesting? I thought that was so interesting. So what is the most expensive brand out there? Which from streetwear, and that's Nike. But it was so interesting to me that then I started going into statistics of where do we spend our money in the United States on apparel, and where would you think that is?
Is it TJ Maxx?
It is.
Yes.
There you go. So, I mean, obviously, there's other companies where the revenue brought in is higher, like Louis Vuitton, but the majority of our retail dollars go to TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Marshalls, their company. So, I want us to get into some of the more deep topics. I would like to start with, I don't know why this bothered me so much, but I have an emotion. I do know why. Okay, let's just dive right in there. This morning, part of my offshoot research that I ended up doing was I was YouTubing, Googling, what does the fashion industry do to our mental health as women? Fashion magazines in particular. And I came across a statistic that said that 70% of women experience depression after looking at fashion magazines. That led me into watching some videos that are, a couple of them were from Australian 60 Minutes. For some reason, a lot of what I pulled up about models came up from Australia in particular. And it made me really sad to watch these videos of these women explaining what their experience was like to be a high fashion model, especially the ones that were on the runway, to understand what it was like for them, because so many of them are brought into the industry in their teen years, mainly because of their body type at that age.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I'm having a really hard time understanding why we allow this. Why women in particular that are in the industry as heads of the industry, such as Anna Wintour and this one particular head of agency, a modeling agency. I watched an interview with her. I believe that she's with Premier Modeling Agency, and her indignation when pressed by the interviewer. This was an Australian 60 Minutes. Tara Brown did the interview. Her name is Carol White. The model agency head. And she was like very defensive when asked about the problems of body image and eating disorders and sexual assaults that happen on the sets by the art directors and the photographers, and the extreme measures that these girls go to lose weight. She was very defensive. She got up and walked out. She was using profanity, and which, but you can't deny it. You can't deny the actual interviews, and that these girls are saying they ate tissues in order to lose weight, to not eat. That this one particular model was like, I ate 3 apples a day for months. That's all I ate so that I could get on the runway. And it just broke my heart. I mean, and I was thinking of it from a viewer aspect when I was initially doing the dive into it, because, I've shared on the podcast before that I was anorexic, and I clearly remember, why I started down that path. How I started down that path was because of a book report I had done on anorexia. But then also I was obsessed with Carol Alt, and she was a supermodel back in my day. I was obsessed with her body. I was upset, and still even to this day, and I'm curious as for you what this is like, but when I look at magazines, I watch movies, when I'm out in public, the first thing that I notice about a woman is exactly the areas that I am the most focused on myself, that I don't like. And I'm fairly obsessed with it. And I was wondering how you felt about that, how you feel about fashion magazines and all of that.
Yeah, I think like it's so interesting how it's shifting now. I think definitely when I was younger, I felt a lot of what you're talking about, because that was still the tail end of that culture. And I mean, we're still in it now. It just looks different. But I totally understand what you're saying. I have an acquaintance who was the roommate of my best friend for a time, and she was a model in New York. My best friend lives in New York. Her roommate is a model. And one of the most beautiful, thin, tall, she's Hawaiian, gorgeous girls. And she's shared on her social media how she was scrutinized, and she started when she was in middle school. And how she's a dancer too, and she was always told, oh, your legs are too big. This girl's legs are so toned and so, like, there's no meat on them. But even still, it's like, oh, my legs are too big. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And I think it's also something to be said about the media in general, whether that's like movies, magazines, adult media, fetishizes teenage girls' bodies, pre-teenage girls' bodies.
Lou, why?
And women, grown women, do not look like that, because that is a child's body. And for some reason, we're expected to look the way we looked when we were 16, 14, 12 years old. Weigh the weight that we were when we were 12 years old, when we're 25, 30, 40, 50. It's insane and it's wrong. That's something that needs to be looked at as our culture. Why do we fetishize children's bodies, and why do we expect women to look like little girls?
I don't know.
Scary.
It is scary. It is terrifying. What are we doing to the generation after us? I mean, I don't understand it. Like they said, in a couple of the things that I read about that Jeffrey Epstein was all over this. And he would tell models that he was a recruiter for Vogue magazine. And I mean, so if that doesn't give you warning flags right there.
And so I actually this will be interesting to you. Sorry for a little tangent. I just watched an interview. Y'all know I get all my stuff from TikTok. TikTok is like a search engine, you guys, so it's really not that crazy that I get all my information from there. But I just watched an interview with the woman who played Nellie on Little House on the Prairie. She is a huge advocate for sexual abuse survivors. And I watched her interview and she was like, think about it. When an adult wants to spend time alone with a child, obviously the parents would be like, absolutely not, that's strange. So all those people, they go and work for the entertainment industry because when the parents get caught in the glitz and the glamour of it all, oh, you're a photographer, a professional photographer for this huge company and you want to go take photos of my children? Absolutely. Take them. Here you go. Oh, you're a casting director? You're going to change our lives? Here you go. She's like, those jobs attract the people that are wanting to take advantage of these children. Mm-hmm. This is we could open up a whole can of worms with this because this is like child abuse and just abuse in general in the entertainment industry as a whole is tied to this same concept that we're talking about.
And to your point, I just don't understand how did we get to the place where this is glamorized? How did we get here where the 12 and 13-year-old bodies are the icon? Mm-hmm. And it's insane to me. And so I'm watching all these interviews and my heart is breaking for these women, but my heart is breaking for girls in general because we're continuing to put this out there. Now, also what was brought up in my research was now not only is it that, it's also airbrushed.
Social media.
And so
filters.
Not only was that unrealistic to begin with, now we've made it completely unattainable. But these young minds are seeing this going, why don't I look like this? What's wrong with me? Never mind the fact that this kind of symmetry, that the beauty of her face of these models is a rarity.
Right.
But, that's not an average thing. But now to put that on there and to make it seem normalized, it brought me down a path that I hadn't allowed myself to go to when I watched the movie because I love the movie so much. That I hadn't allowed myself to say, in general, is it okay to be glamorizing this industry? Or does it not glamorizing it? Is it shedding light on the fact that it only sheds light on one area of this industry. It didn't delve into, however, let's go to when Nigel says, 0 is the new 2, 2 is the new 4, and 4 is the new 6. So basically, you're a 14. Is what he says to her. And then you and I have talked on a different episode where we said, when she says, well, I'm a 4 now. And he's like, yay, you. And they're celebrating the fact that she's a 4 and how that stuck with me. And what that does, those messages. Now, granted, this was 2006. And to your point, some changes have been made. And just like we said in Barbie, that now they have the new Barbies that are different shapes and sizes. And it seems like we're headed in the right direction. It seems like that until you look at still what's on the runway. Now, some plus-size models are now on the runway. That's progress.
Mm-hmm. But only for certain brands. There's still brands that aren't getting with it. And it's also interesting, I think, about the brand I always talk about when I'm in job interviews, when I'm asked about, what's a brand you admire? What marketing do you admire? I always either talk about Aerie or Dove, because I think they both are using social justice as their platform. But it's so interesting because Aerie is like the direct competitor for Victoria's Secret, and Victoria's Secret is known for like the exact opposite, for like shaming women, unrealistic beauty standards. They tried to do what Aerie's doing.
I need to make a correction. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Jeffrey Epstein would say he was a recruiter for Victoria's Secret, not for Vogue.
Oh. Oh, even creepier. Underwear modeling. Okay. Victoria's Secret tried to do the body positive thing, and everybody slammed them for it. They're like, you're really going to try and do this now? And so apparently I saw something the other day where it was like, they're just going back to how they were before. They gave up and they're just doing their old marketing campaigns with the unrealistic beauty standards. And it's interesting. It made me think of with Barbie how the testing didn't do well with the body positive Barbies. And it's like, why? It's even like we are so ingrained to hate ourselves that when we see something that's like, hey, like maybe love yourself, we're like, nope, give me the thing that makes you feel like shit.
Right. Right. So to go back to what I was saying about women, I don't understand. I don't understand how the women of this industry who do have power, like Anna Wintour, I don't understand how she can look at what this is doing to these models in particular. Because let's take the public out of it, because you're choosing whether or not you're buying that magazine, or you don't have to look at it or whatever. Now, granted, these women, girls, do not have to go into this industry. However, the overwhelming message that is being sent to them is that you need to be rail thin. You need to be this image. And I just don't understand how a woman who has fought her way, commanded her way into this position of power, can be okay with reinforcing the glamorization of keeping women in this box, keeping girls in this box, allowing men to objectify women. Why doesn't that go against who she is as a woman of power?
Because she doesn't. I don't want to speak on Anna Wintour because I don't know her, but I think people maybe in a similar position, could be her, could not be her. We'll just generalize that type of woman. I don't know if they're doing it to be like, I'm doing this for women, to win for women. No, they're doing it selfishly because they want to. It's like there's this gatekeepy thing with some people in these high power positions and these high power brands where it's like, I had to fight to get here and you're going to have to fight too. And once they get there, it's like, no one's going to take this from me. And so it's not like, I'm doing this for women and for all women. Maybe they'll say that. Do they mean it? Who knows?
It makes me think of, Lou, it makes me think of Julia on Designing Women. The two episodes that it makes me think of are the one where Charlene's friend is a madam and has...
Yeah.
And, you know, Julia comes against her and goes, you know, you're a woman of power, and what you're doing is allowing the objectification of women. How can you justify that? And she says the same thing to the woman who is the editor of the pornographic magazine. And she's like, how can you do this? How can you look at this and say it's okay when you yourself are admitting that you had to fight and scrape to get here in a man's world? And yet what you're doing is glorifying the containment of women into that exact objectification that you say you fought against.
It's perpetuating. You had to struggle because of the rules that men made in the patriarchy. But you got here, and now to keep your position, you want to perpetuate.
I guess that's what I'm saying. And so I don't have an answer for that, but that's what's not setting right with me. And
I think people who have been in a certain industry for so long or a certain lifestyle for so long, they convince them, they just get used to it. They don't, like, just like Miranda, like, it's like she's so used to doing these things, it doesn't even faze her, you know? And so that's why, like, what with Andy did, like, she stopped it at the beginning. She was only there for less than a year, and her whole life changed. She changed who she was completely, and it has to be something where you decide right then and there, like, this isn't for me. I'm not going to get involved in this, or else you are going to get caught in the whirlwinds. and just keep spiraling, spiraling, spiraling.
Well, and to your point, maybe that is the whole point. The whole point is if you don't cut it off, when you start to get sucked into this, then you're going to lose your whole perspective. And where do you wake up? You know, oh, something else. I'm sorry. I'm starting to ramble because I'm all over the place because it brought up so much for me. It made me start to wonder about NDAs.
I mean, that could have played into why people didn't get involved as well.
Well, and here's the thing. I can understand a non-disclosure agreement if you sign it based on intellectual property. You know, I'm not going to share your ideas that I learned while I was here in your company and share it with the new company I'm going to. That I 100% get. But an NDA to not disclose what happened to you at a company, I don't understand how that's legal.
Because they don't work it like that. They work it like you can't discuss, you know, you can't speak ill of this person because that's brand reputation. They're the CEO of this brand. That's the face of our brand. That's brand reputation. They don't say, oh, you can't talk about your experience. And that's why there's loopholes around it. She didn't say, oh, this was Anna Wintour. Mm-hmm. She said, this is what happened to me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we could say, I mean, to your point, we don't know Anna Wintour. We don't know what her mindset is. Let's just go off of Miranda. We don't think that Miranda had a problem with the fact that, you know, the clothes that the models that she was putting in these situations, it probably wasn't healthy. And, you know, I just think that as women, and maybe it's true for men. I'm sure it probably is on different levels or different subjects or whatever, but I find that for women that it's just so complicated from the standpoint that you're getting mixed messages all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like a body type cannot be a trend. And it's always changing. Like, yes, like in the high fashion industry, it is real thin. But like in pop culture, it goes from like in the 40s, it was like rail thin. And then like 50s with Marilyn Monroe, it was like curves. But then like, you know, it changed in like the 80s. There was like the Coke, like, you know, the druggy like era. Mm-hmm. And then early 2000s, it was like wave thin. But now it's like you have to have lip filler and like a Brazilian butt lift. And, you know, but you have to have like a small waist, but like a huge ass. It's like you can't keep up. Your body cannot be a trend. You're in the body you're in. Mm-hmm. Clothes, sure. Love it. Love keeping up with trends, keeps life interesting. But having body types change like that, that's why we have not to be hateful. I have nothing against plastic surgery. Do whatever you need to do to feel good about yourself. But I think that's why sometimes these celebrities, they look so different than when they first started, because it's like not only have they gotten a lot of plastic surgery, but it's like they had to change with what was popular. Uh-huh. You know, I mean, y'all know I love the Kardashians, but look at how much they have changed from their teens to now. It's a lot to put your body through as well.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. Let's talk for just a moment. I will say a messaging that they said, for us to wrap this up with, that I thought was interesting was, you know, Andy makes the comment to Christian about if Miranda was a man, we wouldn't be having these conversations about
her marriage,
her being a bitch.
Oh.
And her attitude. She's like, and it's true. And it was said in the documentary that I watched the first Monday in May. The director for Moulin Rouge, writer-director for Moulin Rouge and Great Gatsby, and
Baz Luhrmann
was on. And Baz Luhrmann, and he said, you know, if he made the same statement, if Anna Wintour was a man, would they be calling her, you know, the Dragon Lady, or making references to her as the Snow Queen? He's like, no, they wouldn't. And I gotta say, that resonates with me. I'm like, you know, it's true that women who are in positions of power, you know, not Miranda notwithstanding, Anna notwithstanding, the fashion industry notwithstanding, are held held, I feel, to a different standard than men. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and if you haven't listened to the song The Man by Taylor Swift, it is all about this, how a man and a woman could do the very same thing. And we'll look at the man and say, oh, he's strategic. We'll look at a woman, we'll say, well, she's calculated. And, we'll look at a man and say, oh, he knows what he wants. We look at a woman and we say, she's bossy.
And it's interesting to me that, it's even true in the entertainment world. The actors are held to different standards than the actresses. And you and I have talked about movies in general, that, a movie that has a mainly female cast that may be a little bit raunchy is torn apart, whereas a male-centered movie is celebrated. Mm-hmm. And those kind of things. And I think that this movie does a good job of highlighting the fact that, you can be a woman and be driven and be at the top of your field, and people are gonna look at you like there's something wrong with you instead of celebrating your success. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's a central theme of this that can be used to our benefit, used to women's benefit. It's not, I don't mean to be dashing on this. Like there's, like I said, I love this movie. This time around led me down some areas that I hadn't considered before. And I'm actually kind of grateful for it, even though it made me sad. It gave me a different kind of perspective that I think the Barbie movie kicked off for me. I don't think that I would have looked at this as deeply this time around had I not done the deep dive for the Barbie movie.
Interesting.
So I'm grateful yet again for the Barbie movie, for the way that it's moving our conversations into a different direction.
Absolutely. And I think the movie, I don't think it glamorizes the fashion industry. I think it does show that there is an area within that industry, and there are people within that industry that do deserve respect, because it's just like anything else that women are interested in that people like to disrespect, like cheerleading or pageants. Like people like to shit on those things, but there are ways that it can be done respectably, and there are people that are passionate about it where it is an art for them. And so I think there is an area of the movie that gives that respect, but then I also think the whole goal of the movie is to open up conversations like the one we're having right now.
And you got to respect any movie that opens up conversations, right? Mm-hmm. I love it. Oh my gosh, Lou. That was a fast hour. And I could go on and on, but I'm telling you, I got to walk away from this before my head explodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we know what we're doing next there, Lovey?
I don't know what we're doing next.
We're going to have to talk about that. Your dad brought up a really interesting idea that I'm going to tell you later, but it's a secret from our audience.
Okay.
All right, sister friend.
All right.
Well, I love you so much, honey.
I love you too.
And you can walk down any runway, and I would just be captivated by you.
You too.
I'm loving your new hair color, by the way. I love it.
Thank you. If you guys, I haven't posted it except for my close friend story, but I dyed my hair quite a dark brown. I'll probably post a photo dump soon sharing it, but
love it.
Thank you.
I love it. All right, sweetie. Well, I love you.
Love you.
We will see you guys next time. Thanks for going on this journey with us. We appreciate you. We love you.
Yes, we love you guys.
Right,
bye.
Bye. Girl.